Hello, today we're going to talk about the different industry sectors involved in styling. Firstly, we're going to talk about the one that most people know and most people are excited about, and that's the kind of editorial sector. So, editorial styling is all about telling a story through images. We might call it kind of narrative driven styling. As a stylist, you create a world in which you populate, and it's important to kind of have a clear idea of that story. So the purpose of an editorial shoot is to communicate your narrative. The garments are not always the most important part of the shoot. And it's with that in mind that we'll have a look at some examples. So this is an example of a narrative-driven editorial shoot that I shot in 2015. Feels like a million years ago now, and 5 years is probably a long time. And it was centered around the release of Mad Max Fury Road. Now you can see that this is for a magazine, for a publication called Mad to the Max. And it kind of spoke about the story behind Mad Max, or shot an old mine and all those kinds of things. But you can see the garments are fairly styled up. You can see lots of different layers for belts there. Let me get my little mouse and we can have a look. There we go. Lots of layering here. Lots of different accessories, things worn in perhaps unusual ways. And let's jump through. And we can see here from the way that the images are produced that it is about telling this narrative. We've got our kind of iconic Mad Max Interceptor car in the background, and we have people wearing predominantly white, and that could be read as, say, innocent or good. People wearing predominantly black, that could be read as kind of bad or guilty. And then in the midst here, someone wearing kind of half black, half white. And once we start to play this game, you can see people coming through. So is she an innocent? Is she some kind of avenging angel? What are we communicating here? Same with this model here, with her head covered. What is that communicating? Where does these kind of intersecting little concentric lines heading off in the distance, does that bring our eye forward? Is there high tonal contrast between the white of her clothing and the blackness of the mine? You can see that we're kind of telling some story. It's not necessarily a specific narrative, but it's a story about kind of good and evil and somehow kind of some badassery, basically. And again, this idea through the styling of this image from the same shoot, when I spoke about the introduction to styling, when I spoke in that video about the idea of kind of strangeness but mixed with authenticity, we have that same kind of thing here. She's standing in an abandoned swimming pool, but we have all these different layers. We've got her hair, which presents us the idea that it's deliberately done. That plaiting means that it looks like it's deliberately done. We've got layers of accessories here, very, very clear juxtaposition. That's kind of placing two different elements together of a very highly patterned fabric and a very smooth surface of this water. Again, abandoned swimming pools at an old mining encampment to mainstream like a really strange thing. And they are. But this is about telling a story. This is our kind of central character of the story. Is she good? Is she bad? The fact that she's had her eyebrows removed, what does that mean? Have we taken expression away from her? Does she kind of seem this kind of otherworldly being? And here you can see that we have our villain of the piece, and you can see that very simply by the fact that she's wearing all black. She's got all these kind of straps and leather, which indicate kind of holding something in, restricting something. She's got these big steel shoulders on her body, which kind of extends her body beyond its natural silhouette. We've got these red goggles, which provide a high contrast against the kind of black of her outfits and the whiteness of her skin. And in this other image, she's got a very aggressive stance, showing off her muscular arms, holding this long machete. So we can see we've got a good person and a bad person. Okay, stuff's happening here between the two. Let's jump into it. Okay, so now we have our main protagonist and what's she doing now? Okay, she's got a gun, so somehow that communicates something. She's looking away from the viewer. We're not part of this. As the viewer, when we're looking at this kind of narrative-driven approach to styling, we're a voyeur, an observer. She's looking away from the other two, so she's not interacting with those guys. These two people are looking forward. Now she's wearing black. Is she a bad person, good person? But there's some silver on here, so what does that indicate? Our kind of mid person here is wearing kind of a silvery grey, kind of champagne colour. Is she good? Is she bad? Think of these accessories. What story do they tell? Is that somehow connected to this? Aesthetically look pretty similar. So all these kind of layers are going on, and when we read them, we're reading them kind of instantaneously. This is our kind of last image from this series, and again we're seeing things like, okay, well, we've got black, but is it bad? Well, she's placed against a kind of light background, so our eyes aren't kind of lost in the depth. She's got these kind of metallic accessories, metallic belt here, metallic kind of hand cuff things, metallic hair. You know, is she the kind of mid-ground good and evil? Is the metallic dress she's wearing kind of giving us an indication that she's some kind of like warrior or some kind of fighter? You know, when we kind of look through these images, it's not necessarily about selling clothes. It's about telling a story through a kind of series of moods or a series of visual messages. The next sector we're looking at is the kind of bread and butter for most stylists. It's the commercial sector. Now, commercial styling puts the garment or accessory front and center, most times. This includes catalogue, lookbook, point of purchase, and advertising styling. The main purpose of commercial styling is to sell the product. Now, that product might be a service or it might be an object. You know, selling sneakers might be about selling sneakers, or it might be about selling kind of running. You know, the idea of a pastime. Commercial styling requires a targeted understanding of your consumer and what will motivate them to purchase. That is really, really, really important. Understanding who you're targeting will help you connect with that person better and will make them buy stuff. So let's take a look at these three images. So these three images were targeted at a local farmers market. So this was about connecting the idea of food and fashion, and you can see here we have our model. Now these are raw images, so you can see they don't look naturally touched up or very stylized, but we can see we've got our kind of fruit and veg, and this model's hair makes us feel kind of kind of very energetic, perhaps a bit exotic. We've got high contrast between the skin of the model and the color of the fruit and veg. Next we have kind of, this is bread. This is made of bread, and we can see a dress is made of baguettes. You know, this idea of and popcorn around her neck. That we're kind of playing with these notions of kind of like fashion and food and a kind of feeling of being like in country Provence or somewhere in the middle of Europe, that kind of feeling. And then lastly, we have kind of almost a sultry approach to carrots and cabbages. That is kind of very deep purple and bright oranges to these very kind of rosy whites, you know, and they match very much with the skin tone of that particular model. And this idea is kind of about that, connecting these two worlds together. That fashion is as much about food, is as much about clothing, is as much about hair. You know, fashion moves through all these different areas. Next, this is a straight up commercial shoot, and it's about the bed. This is about selling the bed. Now you can see this looks completely insane. Why would a bed be sitting in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere? And what's that person doing with a guitar? And why would a person be wearing those high heels on the bed? And what's this pot of flowers doing? Once we dissect the image, you know, the kind of strange of the image, it makes us wonder why. And I think that when we look at the idea behind this image, you can see that the image is broken up into two halves. We have a kind of big blue sky, and then our very kind of natural stuff at the bottom here. And central to the image is this kind of like strong, powerful woman with a kind of cool guitar. And I think what is being said with this image, what's kind of breaking down, is that this bed forms the connection between the kind of natural and unnatural world. That you can feel like a rock star in this bed, or this bed can connect you to nature, something like that. You know, and the idea is to sell the bed. And lastly, this is an image that all the text and information has been taken off, and this is straight up an advertising shot for a hairdresser. And you can see not even so much about the hair. The hair is very kind of straightforward and very straight, but if you think we put our kind of copy here that we might need to write about the hairdresser, but this kind of otherworldly figure, she almost looks like her arms have been slightly extended. She's looking away from us, and she'll be looking towards the logo or the name of the brand. And she kind of presents herself as a kind of hyper-real version of what a human is, kind of indicating the hair done at this place makes us feel kind of otherworldly or special or somehow unique. And this last one, again, straight up product photography for a particular brand. This is, in this case, for BMW. And you can see that what the shot and what the styling is doing is connecting us with the model. So we can't see the identity of the model, but we put ourselves into her shoes, and she's staring directly at this car. And for us, we're saying, okay, if she's staring at the car but she knows we're here, is she more interested in the car than us? In which case, should I be more interested in the car? Or do we see ourselves as the model? And we kind of put ourselves into the shoes of the model, or looking at the car. High contrast here with the use of the yellow versus the white. And the car is kind of slightly mysterious because it's placed just outside of focus. But we can see the kind of the iconic logo there and the kidney-shaped radiator gills at the front of the car. And we think, oh, for those in the know, that's a BMW, and for those not in the know, that's just an interesting car. The next one we're going to look at is, I'm going to kind of put a bunch together, and that's kind of styling for catwalk TV and film. It's similar to editorial and commercial, and it kind of is a mix of the two. So styling for catwalk and film requires an understanding of who your audience is. I mean, I feel like I'm saying that every single time, but it is really, really important. It's important to think of the catwalk as a stage and the models as actors playing a role. What would the characters wear? Now, if you have that in mind, that makes your job a lot easier. Now, you could do something very similar for editorial styling, for example. You know, who is this character? Build up a backstory, build up a narrative. So what are their motivations? Why is that person on the catwalk? What are they doing? Where are they going? Are we observing them? Do they know we're there? Are they interacting with us? Are they good? Are they evil? Are they authentic? You know, are they fake? Are we trying to see through a facade, perhaps? Let's take a look. Now, this first image is very, very, very minimal styling. Now, we can see here that it is a swimwear, range, and it's a catwalk. But these people don't look like they're swimming. You know, they don't look like they're going for a swim. We can tell that by the context where they are. They're on the catwalk, but also things like, you know, the shoes, the type of hair they have, even the style of swimsuit. The swimsuit is very kind of pared back, very minimalist. So in terms of the styling needs to be the same. If you think about how you are when you go for a swim, either at the pool or the beach, you often have lots of accessories. Maybe things like hats, sunglasses, towels, maybe, you know, bikini covers, things like that you might wear. Whereas this is really pared back and being about like the confidence, you know, the catwalk. This is kind of like the city version of what swimwear is. This is for a fashion event called Fire and Ice, and you can really see from the aesthetic here that that's pretty much what we're communicating. This idea of high contrast, lots of texture here in the skirt and in the sleeves of this garment. It looks like this thing's been kind of burnt or kind of molded using fire in some way, and the dress kind of indicates a bit of fire, and that is kind of really highly contrast with the very bright, very geometric setting. So the idea for this is that the audience would kind of try and understand the identity of this person. Is it a costume? Is it fashion? What is being communicated here? So this is a catwalk show by a label called Call Blimey. Check it out. And it's a collection inspired by the city of Berlin. Now, if we delve into it, we can see that each of these models is styled in some particular way, from our kind of use of makeup here to the bright red accessories. Do they offset, you know, very, very black, very, very red? What are we looking at? We focus on feet. Different kind of metallics here, metallic accessories. You might recognize those from the shoot earlier. And we can zoom in on one of these looks here, and we can see that the way that the styling works communicates the status of this person. So let's take a look at our shoulders. These kind of feathery edges on the shoulders make the person a bit wider and a bit kind of bulkier than they really are. Hair makes the person a bit taller, so we're kind of extending our silhouette up and in width to make the person feel a bit more kind of strong in the shoulders and tall, and a bit kind of bulkier, and I feel a bit more muscular perhaps, and look a bit more intimidating. And that's combined with this really cinched in waist, this little geometric belt here, this little steel belt, giving the wearer kind of a feeling of being kind of very sharp in her angles. You know, sharp shoulders, tall hair, tiny waist, in and out, and that makes this person feel kind of like edgy, cold, dangerous, not soft, not loving, not kind of warm necessarily at all. The same with our makeup. You see, we've got this asymmetric use of makeup here, which really throws off the eye. So if we think about cutting this person in half, we'd see very similar things on the left and right hand side until we see this. And for us as viewers, it kind of slightly throws off our vision of who this person might be. So we're kind of feeling a bit unsteady when we look at them. Now, this is another from that same collection. And again, you can see here long silhouettes, but almost in a triangular shape to give that person a kind of sense of stability or strength. Now, let's zoom in and we can see this big collar giving the person extending their silhouette again. High hair extends the silhouette. This little kind of crown thing makes us think that somehow this person must be regal in some way, kind of nods towards that regality. And then we've got this kind of strapping across their body. So what does that communicate? What is that suggesting? Is it suggesting that they're carrying something, that there's something holding them back, that they need to kind of support something? Lots of kind of notions of kind of strength and power. This is an editorial shoot actually, but I think it's worth kind of putting in here because it was part of a TVC or television commercial, and it was a still from that, and it was for the Australian Brain Foundation, and it was about supporting an event called the Zombie Walk, where people dressed up as zombies and raised money for the Brain Foundation for things like brain cancer, etc., etc. And so this is all about kind of a Walking Dead style narrative of what we're seeing here. And we've got our kind of main protagonist. She looks like a nice enough person who just so happens to be dead and is now being slowly eaten by a bunch of zombies. Everyone here is alive. This is all fake. It is all about kind of creating a kind of shocking, and shocking in the sense that it's supposed to evoke a shock in the person who's looking at it. Very different to what we might see a charity, kind of put forward. This next clip is a television commercial for a fashion festival. I'm going to play it and then we'll analyze it.
We start with the body. We begin from the idea that flesh, muscle, the sweeping curve of a clavicle is beautiful. And so over the body we drape our threads, scraps of dreams stitched together. Watch how they fall across shoulder and waist, over a fragile neck. And how beautiful it is to see our pieces moving and alive. We want to show you what we have dreamed. We want to show you how beautiful we all can be.
Okay, as we go through it, you can see triangular flags, triangular bikini. It's a black and white television commercial, so it's supposed to kind of communicate this idea of kind of serene and very kind of classy, classic approaches to aesthetic. Now you can see from all the styling, garments are either very light in colour, very dark in colour, or a contrast of both light and dark, because we knew this was going to be shot primarily in black and white. So very soft garments against nature, very hard, very high pattern garments against this geometric background in the city. So create a high contrast. And this kind of spoke about the idea of the kind of things you'll see, or the feeling that you'll get when you're there. This a contrast, again, classy stuff there. So these people in kind of evening dresses walking through the city, these luxury cars, very graphic garments. Let's go back here and take a look at things like this. So I just want to pause it. So we've got these kind of three people all wearing their kind of evening dress, staring directly at the camera, all walking kind of very powerfully towards the camera. Then we've got shot of our car again. Now very geometric clothing against a very geometric background. Lots of like triangles and straight lines, and they kind of present this idea of strength. And same again, we're situated from below this person. In terms of his styling though, you can see that he's very, very highly patterned jacket against a very stark, against a very stark background. There we go. And this idea here that we've got our kind of couple and a rendezvous. They look like slightly classy, perhaps a business person. The door of the car is open, so that indicates some kind of fervent behavior or kind of quickness. I mean, one thing you can see here from a classic styling mistake, and I styled this, so I can take it on the chin. Oh boy, look at that terrible Terrible cuff action. But, you know, that's my own fault, and it kills me every day. Again, the idea of the kind of net covering the face. Think about the context in which you see these kinds of clothes. Very kind of classy style events. Again, our logo. Now, if we kind of run through, you can see, again, these geometric black and white, black and white, black and white, black and white, black and white. These soft garments in nature. Soft garments in nature. So it's that massively high contrast. Again, very stark against the very stark dark black, savage black against this kind of light background. And the whole idea for this event was about kind of making the everyday person feel somehow elevated by attending this festival. Now let's move into the kind of last of this series, sectors, talking about personal styling. Now, personal styling focuses on one-to-one styling advice for a specific customer. This may also encompass personal shopping. Those two things are often connected together. Personal styling requires strong interpersonal skills as the majority of the role will be confidence building with your clients. That's really, really key. Most people can wear most things. It is their confidence that stops them wearing something. Now, we talk about things like fit and size and stuff like that, but they're actually really meaningless in styling because there are no rules to say what we can and can't wear, at least in a kind of contemporary Western society. A personal stylist is part therapist, definitely, part life coach for sure, and part dream maker because they make people feel amazing about themselves. Now, I've run an entire video on personal styling, so I'm not going to give you examples here, but I do want to thank you for watching this video on styling sectors, and please follow us on Instagram and have a wonderful day.